There's a famous and pretty shocking quote from the Swedish economist S.R. Lindbeck. He once said, "In many cases, rent control appears to be the most efficient technique presently known to destroy a city, except for bombing." That's a wild statement. How can a policy designed to help the poor, a policy meant to keep housing affordable and stop greedy landlords, possibly be compared to an aerial bombardment? Today, we're going to unravel the rent control paradox. This is one of those rare topics where almost all economists, from the far left to the far right, are on the same page. They agree that while the intention behind rent control is noble, the result is almost always a disaster for the very people it's supposed to help. To understand why, we have to strip away the politics and look at the raw, unfiltered mechanics of supply and demand. Picture a major city, think New York, Berlin, or San Francisco. The demand for housing is through the roof. Everyone wants to live there, but the supply of apartments is limited. In a free market, when demand outstrips supply, prices naturally go up. This is painful for renters, no doubt. It causes gentrification and can push people out of their neighborhoods. They decide to pass a law, a price ceiling that says landlords cannot charge more than, say, $1,000 for this specific type of apartment. People react to incentives, and the consequences unfold over time. They have to pay for maintenance, taxes, insurance, and their mortgage. If the government suddenly caps their income with rent control, but the cost of fixing a roof or replacing a boiler keeps rising with inflation, their profit margin shrinks. So, what do you do if you're that landlord? The rational economic choice is to stop investing in the property. You stop fixing the leaky pipes. You don't replace the ancient boiler. You don't bother painting the peeling walls. Why would you pour money into improving a building if you can't raise the rent to cover those costs? Over time, the quality of the housing stock deteriorates. Buildings fall into disrepair. This is exactly what Lindbeck meant when he compared it to bombing. In cities with very strict rent control, you often see a phenomenon called shadow inventory. These are buildings that are boarded up and left completely empty. The landlord has done the math and realized it's actually cheaper to leave the building vacant and to rent it out at a financial loss. So the policy that was meant to create affordable housing ends up reducing the available housing and turning what is left into slums. Now, let's look at the investment side. Imagine you're a developer with $1 billion deciding where to build a brand new apartment complex. Are you going to build it in a city with strict rent control? Of course not. The risk is too high, the potential profit too low. You'll take your money and build in the suburbs or in another city entirely where the market is free. The result? The construction of new apartments grinds to a halt. This makes the original housing shortage even worse. You now have a growing population fighting over a stagnating or even shrinking number of apartments. But perhaps the most damaging effect of rent control happens on the demand side. It creates a brutal war between insiders and outsiders. The insiders are the lucky ones who already have a rent-controlled apartment when the law is passed. They are the clear winners for a while. They get a cheap place to live and they lock it down. They never, ever leave. In economics, this is called the lock-in effect. Think about it. Imagine an elderly couple living in a big, 4-bedroom apartment in a prime city location. Their kids moved out 20 years ago. They don't need all that space. In a normal market, they would likely downsize to a smaller, more manageable place, freeing up that large apartment for a young family that needs the room. But because their rent is artificially low locked in at 1980s prices, they can't afford to move. If they gave up their cheap 4-bedroom place, The market rate for a new, smaller apartment would actually be asterisk, higher asterisk than what they're paying now. So they stay put. They end up hoarding housing space that they don't need. Now, consider the outsiders. These are the young students, the recent graduates, the immigrants, the young families trying to move to the city for a new job. For them, the situation is a nightmare. Because the insiders never move, there are practically zero vacancies. When a rent-controlled apartment finally does become available, the competition is absolutely insane. Landlords, knowing they can't make money by charging a high price, become incredibly selective. They can't screen based on price, so they screen based on everything else. They demand perfect credit scores, massive upfront deposits, or even key money, which is just a fancy term for a legal, under-the-table bribe just to get the keys. This system actively discriminates against the poor, the young, and newcomers, the very people who need affordable housing the most. Stockholm has one of the world's most famous rent control systems, designed to be fair and equitable. The result? The average waiting time for a rent-controlled apartment in central Stockholm is 20 years. 20. There's an official government list. Parents literally sign their children up for an apartment at birth, hoping that maybe by the time they're adults, their name will come up. People who have rent-controlled units illegally sublet them for 2 or 3 times the official price. They can't afford to wait 20 years, and they certainly can't afford the black market bribes. They started converting their rental units into condominiums and selling them off to owner-occupiers just to escape the regulations. This move alone reduced the supply of rental housing in the city by a staggering 15%. And what was the final outcome? While the lucky few insiders in the remaining rent-controlled units saved money, the rents for asterisk, everyone else, asterisk, in San Francisco shot up by over 5%. Why? Because the supply of available apartments had vanished. The policy intended to make the city more affordable actually helped a small group of incumbents while driving up costs for the entire rest of the city and accelerating gentrification. This is the tragedy of rent control. We confuse price with cost. You can pass a law that says the asterisk price, asterisk of an apartment is only $500, but you cannot pass a law that magically lowers the asterisk, cost asterisk of building it, maintaining it, and paying taxes on it. When the legally mandated price is forced below the actual cost, the supply simply disappears. The great irony is that the only proven long-term solution to lower rents is the one thing that many housing activists seem to hate: build more housing. This frees up units further down the ladder and so on. It increases vacancy rates across the board and forces all landlords to compete for tenants, which is what actually brings prices down for everyone. It's just basic supply and demand. It's been proven to fail time and time again, all over the world, yet it just keeps coming back. And it comes back because it's politically attractive. It sounds so good in a 30-second soundbite. We will freeze your rent. It turns the housing market into a lottery where a few winners get cheap rent and the vast majority of losers get nothing. And a city that doesn't build, a city that doesn't innovate,